today. I'm just curious, how many that are here today been able to make it today?
Oh,
Great. Some of you have met every time you could. There's conflicts and things, so it just didn't always work out every time the schedule went. It's just a great day for you to do that. Some of you made extra effort and rushed off other things. So just again, thank you. We hope that you found it to be at least somewhat worthwhile and helpful. Just a little bit more about things. Education is not, I'm not sure it was ever as simple as maybe we even thought it was when we were back in school, but I can assure you it's much, much more complex than it used to be. We didn't have accountability. The accountability was really just on the individual. It was up to the teacher to teach, and that's what it was. How we have to use responsibility to teach math at a personal level. And we know back in those days there was variation. Better teachers, better schools, better leadership, and sometimes they would put accountability in place. But I can remember in my early days of education, we didn't have principals in the classroom very much. And if it was required to do it, that would be the only time that would be in there, just during that required observation. It just wasn't a culture in any school. Now I'll say again, not in every school. Some schools the leadership is different. But we kind of call that random variation, and we just left up to the teacher. Better teachers and not so good teachers. Well, we may still have that today. The good news is there is accountability. And while I wouldn't say that just throw the accountability system exactly how it is, I don't believe it's exactly got it right. I will say I'm glad there's accountability. I'm glad that we're in a system that really encourages us to know our kids, know what their strengths and weaknesses are. I think it just allows us to be able to do this work. Standards are certainly in place. We are at a kind of a stressful time in education because we're again ratcheting up the standards of what our kids need to know and be able to do, and I believe it is in line with what our students do face with. You use the phrase global economy. That's really what it is. When you look at students that are in our universities, and the percentage of those that are in colleges that we're competing with, they're very serious about academics. They're very serious about their work. That's who our children have to compete with. So we're going to have to perform at a very high level. There's just a lot of complexities go along with that. Certainly a lot of things we've shared with you are things that are not directly related to our core work about teaching and learning. But it's very important that you know enough about that so that when there are bond elections, board elections, we read things, at least have some idea of where it comes from. So we're hopeful that it's been helpful. If you have questions about any area that you're still ready about, hopefully our rest of our cabinet will be here toward the end of the session. So we'll give just a little time today for some questions. So if there's still something that's a burning question today, Mark Thomas, our communications officer, will be going over communication and a little bit about a volunteer in that program. And then Randy Sumrall, our executive director of technology, will be talking about technology, maybe some slides and things about that program and a video. So we'll share those things with you today. But we're not going to limit questions to that. Certainly, if you have questions in those areas, we'll be happy to answer them. But we'll plan any questions you have before we take off and we'll have a graduation ceremony. It's so meaningful to you. It'll be one of the greatest accomplishments of your life, I'm sure. But again, thank you for being here. And our hope is just to build relationships with people that we know care about this community, care about education, and hopefully give you some information. But more than that, give you a person, give you a face and a name that you can connect with, that you can email, that you can call, and feel comfortable and say, hey, I just need to know a little more about it. And we really can't just give you all the knowledge you need and walk out before you're ready. But if you're connected with us and you feel comfortable in calling Mark or me or anyone, hey, post to me, and I don't have an answer. What's the correct answer? We want you to know. We will. So, again, thanks for being here, and without further ado, we'll turn it over to Mark.
All right, I'm going to play tag team here with Randy. When you're the guy who gets to put the PowerPoint together, you get to tell them which order they want to work this morning. I'm actually going to do mine in two parts. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our volunteer program first,
and then Randy's going to talk about the district's technology, and then I want to come back at the end of that and kind of talk to you as a district how we use this. It's hard to believe we started this journey back on January the 11th, and it's 10 months later, and we're here. I want y'all to keep this one in mind. I'll come back to it later, but if you had 20 minutes, what can you do in 20 minutes? And we'll come back, and I'm not going to say much more about that now. We'll come back to that question when I come back. You know, I want to talk about our volunteer program. Back in the mid-90s, our board was very proactive in establishing a policy that required that we do a criminal background check on every person that volunteered in our school district. Now, we've got differences in volunteers and visitors, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But it was a way for us to check who was coming in and working directly with our students. It was before our state requires it. Our state has since required that in every school district, that all volunteers, all visitors have to have a background check. So we were really ahead of the game on that. We've come a long way because when I started 13 years ago in this position, everything was done paper. And I remember the first of the school year when we come in, we had stacks of paper, and we would be trying to do data entry in our office off of that. We don't touch a piece of paper anymore. It's all done online. It's only time we touch things is when people have questions about the status of their applications. And our applications, the background checks aren't even handled out of our department. It's handled, we've got one person in the entire district that handles background checks. They do it for every staff member, for every volunteer in the district. And it's a privacy issue, so you can imagine we do over 7,000 applications a year in our district as far as volunteers, plus every employee every year. And we require that it's done every year. So just because I had a background check back in 1994 when I was hired doesn't mean that they don't need to do one on me every year. Because things change, and so we want to make sure that there's nothing out there. Now, what does a background check tell us? It only tells us if there's been a conviction. Okay? And we're not looking for speeding tickets or things like that. It only tells us if there's been a conviction. And so, we do catch people. There are things beyond sex offenders that we're looking for. If a person has been dealing drugs and convicted for dealing drugs and things like that, we probably don't want that person as a volunteer on our overnight field trip to Camp Grady Spruce or something like that. So we're looking for those types of things. What it doesn't tell us, though, if a person has never been convicted, it doesn't predict what something that somebody may do. And so we see situations, unfortunately, sometimes where people do really stupid things, and they'll come back and say, well, didn't you run a background check? Yes, we did. Well, why did you let them? Well, they were never convicted of anything. So we can't always backtrack, and we have unapproved people before for things that are inappropriate. But just understand, it's not a predictor of what things people may do. Several years ago, we started a new system in our school district, and any person in here that's been on a campus, our parents or our community leaders, if you walk into campus, you're going to have to give them your driver's license. We have a little system called Raptor. We'll put it in a little scanner, and as it scans it does check every visitor that comes on campus against the National Sex Offender Database. So it doesn't matter if I'm here to volunteer or if I'm here just to visit my child for lunch. I'm going to be checked every time I come in there. And every time we have somebody comes on campus that is a registered sex offender, and we're scanning the system, I get an email. Campus principal gets an email. The campus secretary on her screen gets a notification. So we know up front who's on campus. That doesn't mean that they can't come in. That's what we've got to understand. Just because a person has been convicted as a sex offender doesn't mean they can't come have lunch with their child. We have procedures in place, though, to help protect them. And so, they are monitored on campus. It's not like, okay, we know who you are, and you get this big red badge. No, the badge doesn't look any different, but we know up front who those people are, and they're monitored the whole time they're on campus. Now, if there are things within their probation that don't allow them to be within so many 100 feet or so, that system tells us that as well. We don't have that situation that I'm aware of. But we do have, in fact, I learned yesterday from one of our campuses, had a parent come have lunch with their child. Okay, they were allowed to do that. Now, we don't allow them, they can't be an approved volunteer in our district. We do a more extensive background check than just the sex offenders. Again, because there are things that are beyond just sex offenses that we have concerns about. And so that's why we do the more extensive background check. The Raptor system is instant. The volunteer is not, because we've got to have a person that has to take that information that's entered online and put into the system. They have to take that and run that through a processing center. Now, it happens pretty quickly, but we tell people when they do their application, it can take 2 weeks. It usually doesn't take that long, but with one person, if they're out on a week of vacation, I don't have anybody to do criminal background checks. So we try to build a little safety in there. The difference between a volunteer and a visitor, and I just want to share that with you real quick. A visitor can only come in and be with their child. An approved volunteer is one that we run those more extensive background checks, and we feel comfortable in saying you can be a chaperone, or you can go on this field trip and ride the buses. We don't restrict a parent. If I'm not an approved volunteer and tomorrow's my child's kindergarten trip to the zoo, and I haven't done my application, I can still go. We don't tell them they can't go, but we don't allow them to ride on the bus, and they can't be put in charge of 15 other children because we don't know anything about them. So they can go and they can be there with their child and be a part of that. Our approved volunteers, though, we feel comfortable that we can say, Tracy, you get these 4 ladies and you're responsible for them right there. And we know a little bit about them. And so that's the difference between being a volunteer and a visitor. I want to come back and talk about my other pieces here in a minute. I want to just kind of talk briefly about that first. I'm going to introduce Randy Summerall. He is our Executive Director of Technology for the district. He's going to talk to you about how we use technology in the district and our plans for the future. And then I'll come back and talk about the communications piece.
I have my really big timer here to make certain I my staff member just delivered my clicker at the very right moment, so hopefully the Well, gee, Dr. Brown must have stepped out. Wanted him to hear the story. I've got a little very quick story for you to understand about working in the right context with technology. And fortunately, I didn't wear my clicker, but they didn't bring me an extra. There we go. The story has to do with a gentleman that was in a balloon, a hot air balloon. And they did a lot of planning with the staff as to where the hot air balloon was going to go. And despite all the planning, the winds just came and changed the direction. I see some of y'all smiling. A couple of y'all have heard this already, so bear with me. And the winds of change came in and kind of blew him off course, so he was in a word lost. And so the gentleman up in the hot air balloon saw somebody down on the ground, and he yelled down there, he said, "Hey there, I'm kind of lost, where am I?" And so the guy on the ground looks up, kind of looks around, thinks about it, and says, "You're in a hot air balloon about 150 feet in the air." Now the guy kind of goes, "That didn't help a whole lot." And he says, "Well, I need a little more detail. Can you tell me a little more specifically where I'm at?" So the guy, he whips out a GPS out of one pocket, pulls the smartphone out of the other, and he starts, doing things with buttons. And then he looks up at the gentleman in the air and he says, "You're a longitude 98.7 and 3 minutes east-west, and you're at 19.3 degrees longitude." Well, the guy in the hot air balloon just kind of rolls his eyes like, "Great. That didn't help me very much." So he looks down and he says, "You must be a public school director of technology." And the guy's astonished. He said, "Why, yes, how did you know?" And he says, "Well, you've given me a tremendous amount of information, and though very technically accurate, is of absolute no use to me." The guy's kind of stunned, thinks about it for a moment. He looks up and he says, "You must be a public school superintendent." And the guy in the balloon is astonished, and he says, "Why, yes, how did you know?" And he says, "Well, despite all of your planning with your staff, you're up there over us all. You have no idea where you're at. You have no idea where you're going, and somehow that's my fault." So when you're dealing with technology, you have to make certain that you can apply it in the right context and the right place. So, let me get the mic. Goodness knows, I'm a musician. I know how to use a mic. Where do we use technology in education? The first place we use it is in the classroom. Obviously, we use it for classroom instruction. We have labs. I could spend 30 minutes telling you all the different labs that we have. So we have lab instruction. We have career and technology programs. We have a school at the high school level, the Bechtel, that specializes in it. We also have career and technology programs in our high schools and all the way down into our middle schools. We use technology for assessment, and as you can see right now, we use it for visual presentations. Administrative technology. Well, what a lot of folks don't know is that consumes a lot of our time in support of technology. There's a tremendous amount of technology that's in the administration. The largest things, the three largest things we have to support is just your daily productivity. Everybody knows you use Microsoft Office to do your personal productivity. We have enterprise management. We do our payroll, human resources purchasing, and many other business processes. And then our student information system, and we'll talk about what that is and what it does in just a moment. But we have a system that tracks a lot of information about our students. And then the third thing, and this is the new and growing area for us, which is data and information. We have now systems that track student performance. We've been doing state reporting for a long time. That's PEAMS. And also very new to us is the areas of prediction, diagnosis, and early warning. Talk about that more in a minute. So let's talk about instructional technology in detail. We have instructional labs. In our schools, more primarily to the elementary schools, we have labs that teachers can take their students into for just general subjects. You're studying a particular thing in social studies, you want the students to do work on a particular website, you can take them into the lab. We have content labs that are specific to content. We have labs that they go in and learn technology on technology. We have content labs where you go in specifically for reading. We also have the CTE, which is for career and technology, and we have literacy labs specific to students moving forward in their ability to read and to write. We have classroom desktop computers. We've been, for a few years, moving computers from labs in classrooms. Why do we want to do that? Primarily because we lose instructional time when we have to take students out of the classroom, get them all lined up, take them down to the lab, set them all down, get the computers booted up, get them logged into the software, get the software going. You can lose 15 or 20 minutes in each direction.
So 30 to 40 minutes out of the instructional day that you lose just moving students back and forth can be a tremendous amount of time. So we started to migrate computers towards classrooms. Okay, here's the biggie. The new one, the tablets and the smartphones. What are we doing with that in the district? Well, there are some theories out there in education that are starting to permeate, and we're all kind of testing and trying it. One of them is bring your own device. Well, how's that going? So here. Why is that? Well, first off, we really don't have the wireless infrastructure. We don't have enough wireless networking to support all the devices that the students are bringing. Secondly, when we allow them to bring their own device and we have no control system, which costs money, then the students have an ability to really do what they want, and you start running into problems with middle school students cyberbullying other students when they're supposed to be doing their homework and things like that. So you have to focus when you're doing a bring your own technology on not only the use of the device and how you can connect it, but how the students use it and how the discipline and instruction flows through the day. So there have been some changes. A lot of those were made. I've been here 8 months now. There were a lot of changes before, and we're instituting changes since I've come here. The tablets, that's an interesting story. Without almost any effort from this administration, the district has purchased over the last 2 years 1,312 tablet computers, almost all of them iPads. So you can see that this is more than a trend, or this is more than a fad. This is an oncoming trend to move towards tablet computers, or tablet devices. So is a tablet just a little computer? Yes and no. A tablet, it is kind of a computer-type machine, but it does not operate like a desktop computer. It uses what we call thin applications. Here's the way I normally describe it. You have a piece of software for your PC at home. You pay $50 for that piece of software, it does 50 things. When you have an iPad and you pay $1 for that application, for that software, it does fundamentally one thing. So it shifts how you do the work. How does it shift it? Well, instead of taking kids to the lab and putting them in front of a piece of software and saying, over the next 30 minutes, do 30 things, now in the classroom, they'll pull out the tablet. They have a quick lesson. We just have a little bit for them to learn, a little chunk here, a little chunk there. Do this one thing here, learn that one concept. Do that one thing over there, learn that one concept. It really is different in teaching in a classroom with a tablet than it is teaching with a desktop computer. Projectors and smart and document cameras. So where are we at with that? Every teacher, as far as I know, has a document camera. The problem is that we only have about 40% of them mounted off from the ceiling. The rest of them, they pull them out on a cart, then they have to run the cable like we did over here. They have to run the cable, they have to run the power, and we just got dinged last week by the Haltom Fire Department because we had teachers who were actually running them through the ceiling and dropping them down. So they didn't have to, run the carts over. I don't blame them. I would have, well, actually, I've done the same thing in my wife's classroom in the school district, but I tucked them around the corners. But, it's a fire hazard. And not only that, but let's say you're teaching kindergarten kids and you've got a projector on a cart. Well, you just can't have, 20-something kindergarten kids sit there for 20 minutes watching a video. They have to get up and dance and move, and they get up, and they all are right in front of the projector. So you can understand the problems that we have with our projectors. So we have in the proposed bond, to be able to mount the rest of them. However, we don't know if we can wait with the fact that it's a fire hazard. So we're working right now to see if we can get those projectors mounted. The projectors are being used more and more off of the internet, bringing video in from the outside, as opposed to us buying the videos and storing them here and trying to show them on the projectors. It definitely saves money and gives a much broader set of content for us to be able to use. The document cameras are, people call them a replacement for the overhead projectors. They're really more than that. You can take a big storybook and put it under the camera and show it, where you couldn't do that with an overhead projector. So it's really a wonderful tool for the classroom teacher to be able to take something that was hard for some students to see, that was only for a small group, and now you can show it to the whole class using the projector. And then we have smart boards and response systems. The smart boards have been around for a while. We don't have them in every classroom. And the fundamental feeling about a smart board, well, let me say, what is a smart board? It's fundamentally a board that you project on, and you actually can go up and touch it and make the mouse movements and do all your choices that you normally do with a mouse. You can do that by touching the board. And there is software for free if you own the smart board. Tons of software that's designed around the use of that smart board. We have them in about 40% of our classes, and the feedback we get is that the teachers never had a smart board. It's kind of like, well, I don't know if I really need one or not. But then you give a teacher a smart board, and they learn how to use that, how to use all of the internet technology, the software, and be able to present that in front of the children. Then you have the children actually go up there and start touching and moving things. It makes the learning much more active, participative, and the teachers that use the smart board generally tell us, I don't know how I got along without it. So that is something we're also proposing to be in every classroom at the elementary level in the bond. The response systems are new. We're actually just testing those right now. That's an ability to go in with the students and actually, they see something on the smart board, they click in their answers. The teachers can then drop that information into our student performance system, and they can actually real time every day see how their students are performing. Our administrative technology, we've just moved over to a new piece of software called Tyler Munis for our payroll, human resources, and purchasing. Not much you really need to know about that. The paychecks do come out every month. That's a good thing. Skyward is our student information system. Many of you who are parents or teachers have dealt with the online portal where the parents can go in and look at the grades. They now have a smartphone application also that the parents can get into their students' information. We did not choose to get into it until now because it was not secure. There were issues with security, but they fixed those, and we are about to, Mark, I think we have some announcements coming out very soon, if they haven't already come out.
I'll announce it in about 20 minutes.
Oh, thank you. What great timing. So there's going to be more coming out with Skyward, and the beautiful thing about Skyward is we can move that information on the students into other systems that I'm going to show you in a minute. And the last one, Microsoft Office for productivity. We're what you call a Microsoft shop. We pretty much use every software that Microsoft has. If there's something we can do with their software, we do it. Why? It's cost effective. We have a large general license with Microsoft that allows us just to buy fundamentally everything, and then we can use it throughout the whole district. So if there's something that's Microsoft and we need to do something new, we go there first and see if they have the software to use. The data and information, this is a fairly new area for us. And this is something that we're adding in to provide an ability for the teachers and the administration to be able to help manage actually where the students are performing. The Eduphoria is the student performance. We have an ability to go look at all of their testing and see how they're doing. We also can manage the curriculum. The lesson plans go through that, and all of the curriculum is posted into that system. We also track our professional development there. We just have purchased a data warehouse, which allows us to pull not only that performance information from Eduphoria and Skyward, but also we can pull financial information, we can pull attendance data, discipline data, other PEIMS data, and look at that in the larger picture. You see core assessment. iStation is something new we brought in this year, thanks to the state, that we're able to do more detailed testing on their reading performance, and the teachers can get, again, a real feedback every day. It's game-oriented, so when the students take the test, they feel like they're playing a game, and yet we get excellent feedback on it. And the last one is predictive analysis. I used to call that voodoo science, but I think it's much more reality now. It goes in and looks at the history of the student and predicts how they're going to perform. And you can then focus on the students who appear to have slower gains and to be able to accelerate their gains. What are the opportunities and what are the challenges? The opportunities are, with all this new technology, there are a lot of new ways to teach and to learn, better ways, I will say. They're closer aligned to the curriculum. We're moving all of our technology into being exactly what the state is telling us that our students need to learn. Greater productivity for the teachers and administration. We have more information to make decisions with, and we have an ability to have a greater outreach with communication, with better information to provide to our community. Our challenges: the cost of updating our technology, the training for a large staff, and the biggest one over there on the right, this stuff gets obsolete before we've even used it for its value. The iPad 1, which is about 2.5 years old, can't use iOS 6, is what I was told yesterday. So you can't go to the latest operating system. So, you know, for long, that iPad 1 is going to kind of be a dead weight if you want to use the newer software on it. So we are running to keep up. Challenges. We also have a real problem with maintaining equity. That's a real problem in that the older schools don't have the infrastructure to be able to handle all the new technology that we can buy with Title I. The newer schools aren't Title I schools, so they don't have all the federal dollars for us to put the technology in. So every school looks a little bit different in the technology that we're able to put in. Those are the things we're going to try to rectify through the bond if we can. And then keeping everything secure. When you have an organization this large, security can be a real challenge. What is changing in instructional technology? The computer labs are starting to move over to computers in the classroom. As I mentioned before, desktop computers are being replaced by tablet devices. The televisions that we have are starting to be replaced by the projectors. We're going to start pulling those televisions out over the next 3 years, so you won't see very many of them in the schools anymore. Expensive software being replaced by those inexpensive applications I told you about. This is a big one. The wired networking is migrating over to wireless networking. That's big, that's expensive. The only place we can afford to do that is through a bond, which is why we're proposing it there. But folks, this is where the world is going. If you're not there already, you will be soon. Computer-based learning is moving to collaboration. Students are working, instead of individually on the computer, they're using the computers to work together in collaboration. And work in the classroom is starting to change over to mobile work. Work anywhere in the school, or take your work home. Work in the local library. Work in the Starbucks. So we're having a scenario, creating a scenario that students can learn pretty much anywhere, anytime. How does it make a difference? Individualized learning. The students can learn more on their own. While they're working in collaborative groups that actually take away more individual learning. They're highly engaged in this technology. As I said, they can learn anywhere, anytime. And we're actually, with the newer technology, lowering our cost. The cost of these tablets is about half of that of a PC, and the maintenance is about half of that of a PC. So we're lowering our cost. The students tend to have more ownership in their learning when they're doing it with technology, and even more when they're doing it with personalized technology, like a smartphone or a tablet. And we can differentiate the instruction by letting the students work in collaborative groups instead of having all the students have to work on the same thing at the same time. Not only teacher lecturing, but in the lab, instead of all of them working in a lab doing the same thing. We have an ability to let the students work in groups and collaboratively create some of their own learning or be able to do different lessons with different groups. The issues that we have, as I mentioned earlier, there's a potential when you have individualized technology for the students to abuse the technology. Even though we talk a lot about the technology, the social type of technology is now used in collaboration, we also can have students who get very isolated. We have students who walk into a classroom, they've got their little headphones on, they're sitting in the back of the class just ignoring everything else. So just as it can be used for a group, it can also pull a student away and allow them to withdraw. We don't want to do that. Less security we've talked about. Who owns the application? If you own an iPad, you know that you have an account with the Apple Store. Well, Apple didn't design their iPads to work in a scenario like a school. So who owns the application? How do we get it that every student can get an application on that device that we need? Do they buy it? Do we buy it? That's a real problem for us. As I said earlier, lack of wireless coverage, and then what we call multiple platform support. You own an iPad, you own a Samsung device, you own a Motorola device. We have to support all of these, and Windows 8 is coming out with a whole new mobile platform. So it's a challenge for us. If we're going to say, hey, bring your own stuff, we have to be willing to accept and work with anything that they bring. So that's one of the challenges. So where are we going? I'm going to give you a little bit of a vision of the future.
this and want to cooperate. You notice mom is on an airplane somewhere, and she can see exactly what her student is doing. Teachers, that means they'll have to keep their lesson plans up very well, because anywhere in the world, parents are going to be able to figure out what's going on. Mom's figuring out her information about where she's about to arrive. I thought it was interesting that where did she pull that nice little piece of technology out of her book. Microsoft wants us to know that we're still going to have books in the future. This girl's doing homework at home, and you can't really tell it yet, but she's actually doing her work on the kitchen table. Now, that's nothing new except for the fact that the work is in the kitchen or on the kitchen table. A lot of our surfaces in the future are going to be able to be fundamentally monitored or projected. But an interesting thing is she's doing homework at home and it knows exactly what work she's supposed to be doing. The data that we work with is very important because the information about what the student needs to work on needs to follow them everywhere they go, especially at home and away from school, so that the parents and the student can be more involved in what's going on where in the classroom we feel that the student has the greatest need. So it's not just the technology, but the data behind it and the whole network that connects it together and allows us to follow the student. It's also kind of this, spooky future, do we want them knowing that much about us scenario. The fact is that I don't think we can stop the progress if we want to focus on where the student's greatest needs are and provide that data no matter where they're at. This is Microsoft's presentation. They actually have two videos, and I've given you the links in your information if you want to go home. I highly recommend looking at it. They have two videos looking at all of both videos because the stuff that's not education is also great. The next part is two compilations from, of all people, Corning glass. What do they have to do with education? Well, we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, I still don't believe they're going to be able to make that 3D stuff. That one, I'm just not a believer in. The glass in the back, they can do that now. In her hand is her tablet, very thin, very small, and it's communicating with her closet door. Both my children have been that fashion conscious. They're going to harass Dad a little bit. She pulls her tablet out. We do expect that someday that these will be inexpensive enough that the students will be buying them instead of the school district. By the way, we are looking at a tablet right now for $89. So you can see that stuff's arriving very fast. All the glass that you see in the car, that can be done right now, we just can't afford it. Okay, here we go, we're getting to school.
course, they're also attentive. You notice that she's putting her device into a mount. These are actually starting to be produced right now. I want one of those walls. I want one in my house, my office, my wife's classroom. You've seen not walls like that, little technology that kind of looks like their tablets in some of the latest movies. That's not fake in many cases, that's real. Once again, we just can't afford it yet. You can see how easily they move from whole class to group to individual work. And you don't really get it out of this, but if you can follow the story in more detail. Right there, she brings up a color that she's studying, but she also has pictures of things that it knows she's interested in. Now, folks, Amazon, Google, Walmart, they're all gathering information on us. They know what our likes and dislikes are based on our buying patterns. That same kind of technology can be applied to our students to be able to focus the technology on the things that are the greater interest of the student. It's a lot of information to pull together, and it's going to take many years to move in that direction. By the way, that's what we call augmented reality. And a lot of the instructional companies are starting to work that into their software. How can we take the room around them, the world around them, and add reality to that to give them an educational experience? Of course, we all have networks in the middle of our forest. Now all of a sudden the experience goes home. Very important part of learning. Microsoft talked to me about buying Xboxes for school, and I thought, that's what I need, a game console in school. But on the other hand, you look at a scenario where the parents are engaged with the student, it's not necessarily a bad concept when you think about it. And you see the younger daughter working with the colors, with mom. The information, again, from school makes its way home, and an easy ability to move right into learning at home. Interesting, huh? When you look at that type of a scenario, we have to take a look at what are we doing with technology now? And if that's the world that we're going to go to, and our motto here is that students succeed in the world they create. How can we have them create that world unless they know what the future is going to look like 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now? We're trying to move technology to that direction that we can look at what it's going to look like and be able to start to design that scenario now so they can actually start creating that future world. Have a lot more information in here. There are more slides. I knew I couldn't get to all of them, so I figured I would take it as far as it could go, but my timer tells me I'm done. And getting to the video and seeing where we were heading with technology is the important thing. We do have a bond election coming up. I hope that you'll take a look at the information about the bond, because fundamentally, there's no additional or new money for technology, and we're kind of in the old world. We need to move to the new, so I hope that you take a look at it.
The exciting part of that video is a lot of what we saw there I can do right here, which is really pretty interesting already. September the 5th, about 5:45, I was getting dressed for work and I called that we had a fire at Holiday Heights Elementary School. So I finished getting dressed, I grabbed my iPhone and my iPad. And I was telling this very well ago, I was standing by the battalion commander who was commanding that group. And from that, I was working with Kim, who was setting up phone calls for me to call the school. I was working with Stephanie, who was doing some stuff on the web. I was posting stuff on Facebook from my iPad and making phone calls to all the staff and all of the students on the campus. And I did all of that from right here. And you know, the neat thing about that glass tube is when that touch technology is already there. And so it's exciting because you know, where are we going from this? You know, we saw even yesterday, Apple's releasing newer, better, faster, which means everybody else is right there behind us too. So the technology that we're trying to keep up in communication to communicate with parents is just ongoing for us. I was one of the last that wanted to do Facebook, I'll tell you that. I didn't want to do Facebook. We launched it having 5,000 friends within the first 3 months, and we're over. And I'll share some of those numbers here in a minute. I asked you at the beginning, what can you do in 20 minutes? Give me some ideas. What can we do in 20 minutes? I'm going to tell you where I'm going with this in just a second. Check your emails in 20 minutes?
Not me.
Well, I do all things.
Dishes, start the laundry, take the dog.
Start the laundry. Start the laundry. And I need one. I have not found a washing machine that wash my laundry and dry in 20 minutes. I can start it,
I
but
can
that's
start the laundry.
my staff loves this. Okay, the first one worked out. Okay, but they love this. I can drive to and from work twice in 20 minutes, unless the ducks, it's the spur lot park, decide it's time to do the duck crossing. And sometimes it slows me down. We get the oil change in 20 minutes. We can now watch, thanks to things like Netflix and things like that, we can watch a full TV program in about 20 minutes. You never watch a commercial. I love that feature. We can make a cake in 20 minutes. Yeah, I said, read it, at least you can make it in 20 minutes. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do in our day. And 20 minutes seems like a long time, but 20 minutes when you're dealing with certain situations is not. 2 years ago, when we were dealing with the weather, the severe weather, one of the things my department's responsible for is communicating to the community that we're closed. We can't always count on Channel 4, 5, 8, 11. They start running this list of all the school districts, and we're B, and they're on E, and they're in alphabetical order. You got to watch a long time before it scrolls back to the list. And so we have a system in place, and our board will be voting tomorrow night on doing some upgrades to the system. But in 20 minutes, we made 26,000 calls. I know that the cities use these similar type situations as well for emergency situations. We can call every staff member, every home in about 20 minutes. We have the capability of calling, if you're a parent, we ask for every phone number in the book. Whether you a home number, a work number, a cell number, a grandmother's number, and all that. We can call all those numbers at about as fast of a time as well. We've never used that system. We call, I take it back. We did the first day of the snow day. And then I called the company and said, you got to help me because I don't need to be calling mom's cell, dad's cell, mom's work, dad's work, and their home. That didn't work. So we made some tweaks to the system so I can call just the house now in those situations. But if we had a true emergency, I can take it down to a classroom, I can take it to a campus, I can take it to the district level. We can even, if need be, take it into zones if we need to make emergency calls, which gives us great flexibility. The nice thing, and this is why I keep my phone on, I can do every bit of that from this device here. And in our system as well, because we have multiple languages in our district, we can send a call based on language. We've got to be able to record it. That's a difficult challenge at times. But if I've got impending weather coming in, I already have my translator on standby. And I can tell you, typically, we probably most likely already had the message recorded, because if it's easier for us to have it recorded and never use it, and sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning to wake somebody up enough to say, can you sound awake and record this message in Spanish for me? Here's where we're on Facebook. Again, I didn't want to do Facebook. I really thought it was a passing trend, and Stephanie and I kind of kept on this, and she's kept with me on this. And now we've got over 7,000 fans on Facebook. As as I was checking a report this morning, we had 6,200 hits on those fan pages this last week. Not bad. Not bad. It's a communications tool. It's one of many. What I've got sometimes is I can't use just one. And so we're using Facebook. You can see we do use Twitter there. For the most part, once you get on Facebook, you get on Twitter. Sometimes we drop some things on Twitter we don't necessarily put on Facebook. One of those was, I'm going to remember days of my week here. Yesterday, during the band competition, we did a thing, we pushed out with the bands, with the Star Telegram about posting comments and pictures and stuff. And we were trying to follow some of those things as well. Stephanie's been recording Random Ribbon Week pictures and stuff on our site as well. We also do a weekly newsletter called B News. We've got another almost 6,000 people. That number, I watch that, I get a report every week. That number's getting real close to 6,000 people every week that gets that. And the open rate's not too bad. We're above the national average on there. I don't know what it is today. I'm pleased that we're above that. Again, it's just another tool for us to get information. Because some people like to read the B News. Some people never open it, but they follow us on Facebook. Some people look at us on Twitter and never look at either Facebook or that. Then we do also, for the most part, you can find this on our website, but it's directed for our staff. It's called Enlighten. So again, once a week, Thursday night after the board meeting, we'll send out an Enlighten to our staff. It gives them a report of what happens in the board meeting, plus some other things that are going on across. And so we've got another 2,900 emails and counting, which we're dealing with there. This is our big one, our website. And I just don't see websites ever going away. Let me tell you why I don't think ours ever will. Last year we had 5.9 million page views off of our website. That's pretty good. There are some companies that are out there for profit that would like to have that many views off their website. And as I checked between January the 1st and September 30th, we had 5.2 million views off the website. Over 3 million visits. So we've got people who are coming in and then hitting multiple pages in that. But even at that, we've had over 3 million visits to our website. And those aren't necessarily unique, because every time I get on it, I count as one. But you know, and I see that as a positive for us, because if I go out there and I'm coming back, then we're providing the information I hope that is important. The piece that's hard for what we do in communication is, this is great, but this could also be a curse. Because, and I keep pointing over to Perry, because Perry works with the emergency management out of Haltom City, and we do a lot of work together. When you've got something going on, and students start tweeting, and Facebooking, and text messaging, and they don't have a clue what's going on, they cause a real problem. But all the tools that we have available to us, we can do things very quickly. We can pull the trigger on all of those things and touch a lot of people in 20 minutes or less. But what we're trying to do is we've got to be slow enough to be accurate. And it frustrates people at times because I want it now, I want to know now, but the thing is we do too, but we want to make sure it's right. But too many times you get the first blush of a report isn't really what happened. One of my first things I dealt with when I started this position was a little girl who came home and said, somebody tried to take me as I walked home. So any parent that scares to death. And the first thing we want to do is to send a letter out to the school and say, we've got a predator in the neighborhood. But how change ended from the end of the day to the beginning of the day is she had really gone somewhere she wasn't supposed to. And in order to not try to get in trouble at home, she tried to blame somebody. And so we could have easily caused a panic in our community. And so understand, we want to be fast. We're processing. We're part of, our department is part of the district's emergency management team. So as we're dealing with that, we're processing things as quick as we can. But we're not going to pull the trigger until we feel comfortable. And So help us spread that word to people that not that we're trying to hide something, but it's hard when you say, we've got a predator in the community, and then you have to come out the next day and say, oh, it really wasn't true. We've done that one time. I remember that, and we did that. And then the community's go, well, why did you even send the letter? And not send the letter, we were wrong. You sent the letter and we were wrong. So. But again, we try to use as much of the technology available to us as possible. This is great. We use every bit of it. It gives me access, even as I was traveling to Rhode Island at the end of September. Middle of the night, I happened to get up and open it, never open your email. Don't open your email in the middle of the night. It's never good. And all of a sudden, I'm at work. And I'm working, and I spent several hours at work, but I was dealing with the things I needed to do. But had you called me, you wouldn't have known where I was. And that's the neat thing about what we have in our technology today. You don't know where we are and what we're doing, but we can still handle all of these things, like communication skills. And so I've got a great staff that I can say, Kim do this, and Stephanie do this, and I'm processing things as well. And we're able to touch so many pieces in our district. And it's ever changing. Let me tell you real quick about Skyward, because I told you in 20 minutes I would tell you about Skyward. By the end of this month, we're supposed to have the app live. You can already go out to the Android store, the iTunes store. I think Microsoft, Google has a store. You can download any of those apps right now. It may be active today, it may not. But we're kind of publicizing it to the end of the month because we want to make sure that we get everything done. Again, the reason Randy said we didn't jump right on this is a security issue, because when they first released it, you just, with like most apps, you just click it and it opens. Well, that's great, but it also, as a parent, as you know, gives you access to student grades and things like that. You may not want your child to have access to the same material that you do as a parent. When you close the app, you never had to log back in. That has been changed in Skyward. So there's a security feature in there. So when you close the app, you open it back up, you should have to re-log back in. It is to protect the integrity of the data that's in that file. So no, that was kind of the reason we decided we wanted to wait until they address some of this security issues that were a concern for us. Do you have any questions for me about communications? Yes, sir.
Mark, excuse me, it's a challenge for us to communicate to all the citizens and staff and other avenues we need to communicate with. But what I'm finding the most difficult part is the deaf community. And we're still using deaf community. I'm just trying to find out what does BISD do for the deaf community.
Well, yeah, and that's a challenge. It's not just that. It's a challenge for us because we've got 40 different languages. We can't translate 40 different languages when we start doing this. And so we try to touch as many as we can. We know there's always going to be challenges for us. It's the same as you when you're dealing with those types of situations. And so it's an ongoing thing that we've got to continue to look at, because we do have the ability, and I've been a little slow in rolling this out because I want to make sure all the other pieces do, but then the piece that goes with the phone calls is I can send with that a text message that says the same thing at the same time. But it's a thing we've got to make sure we've got the right numbers to do that. And so that would help us in dealing with that situation. And we've got some that we work specifically with parents that are hearing impaired, or we would have to provide translators for school events. That would help address that issue. But again, we've got to take care of big pieces first before we start, rolling out the smaller pieces. And there may be a point as a parent we get to the point, I don't want a phone call. Don't call me at 4 a.m. and tell me school's closed. Send me a text message. Okay, we're not too far from doing that when we have some options out there for parents to be able to decide how they get that. So that really should help with those types of situations.
Bradley.
All right, great.
All right, any questions from the group or other cabinet members that joined us? Further questions about communication, questions about technology, or anything else that's on the mind?
Do you have any more information on how the education funding may come down in this legislative session?
Mike Seal knows everything that they're going to decide next spring. He's just waiting to tell you. He is a man of all knowledge. But heard a few things. I guess the good news is they're at least projecting now that there might be a surplus more than they thought. What are they going to do with that? Are they going to take that and replenish some places where they took some money? That's what we don't know. The session starts in January. Certainly we'll have a lot of people fighting for education, reminding them that they took $5.4 billion worth of grant money in out of the fund there. So we'll be reminding them that. Mike, anything you'd like to add?
Well, we've had a change in legislative leadership, and the change in legislative leadership is seems to be focused a great deal on school choice, on vouchers, on charter schools. One of our concerns is that before our funds are restored, that they siphon some off. I'll tell you, my personal opinion is school choice is a good thing. It's a fact of life. As long as the people are informed, the right people who really need that choice get that choice. I don't think it'll siphon off a lot, but it's made this view of this legislative session a little more confusing. Each year they make a little bigger run at school choice. Usually it doesn't have that significant of an impact. I'm hoping it won't have that significant of an impact. But we also have some legislators that believe that this cut in school funding was a good thing. We have some very powerful business people who believe that we just have more money than we need, that this is a good thing. We've tightened our belts, and frankly, tightening our belts, I've been through this long enough. About every 5 years, you need to go through a really serious reevaluation of every place you spend every dollar. We do that every year, but we don't do it as intently as we do when they tell us we're going to have a few $1 million less. So we've gone through a great exercise. We're positioned well. I believe all the signs point to us not being good in funding next year, but being better in funding next year than we are this year. I believe the state is still going in the right direction, probably will continue in that direction of equalization. We will never have equal funding to the wealthiest districts, but we'll have a little more equal funding. So we certainly don't have the same feeling we had last year and the prior year. We have some hope in this, and I think frankly, I think the legislators are going to have to make a great effort to stick in our ass to not give us more money. It's going to have to be intentional.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there such technology out there that if you have the kids bring in their iPads and phones and all that, is there technology that allows you to block them from accessing Facebook and Twitter while they're on the campus?
Yes.
If they're on our network, yes. Yes, ma'am. Okay, Roland.
My question, and I love the technology. I love it. Even on the city council, we have iPads, and I was the first one to do that. And now we all have them, everybody. And I love that. I love the technology. But the fear is, what happens when the power goes out? You know, what's the plan for the teacher when they've got to find pencil and paper again? You know, I mean, how? You know, we all kind of face that. So what would be the plan when you go on the technology? It doesn't work. If you couldn't get this to work, then what would you have done? And I think that's what we face all the time. Even on the city council with our iPads, if we can't get them turned on during the meeting, we don't have the paper agenda anymore. So somebody's going to scramble and buy this one. You know, so that, I think there has to be those things too to consider with the technology. And I'm for all the technology. Love to have the piece of glass, you know, to carry with you.
Well, I can speak for educators. I think educators are the very best at improvising and being flexible because no matter what level you are, if you're a teacher, you're an assistant principal. I remember the assistant principal always having a to-do list. And the first thing that happened was 743 corrected. And at the end of that, I go, wow, that was a cool exercise. I just wish I'd gotten some of that. So as things happen, when power goes out, yeah, that's a different story. We just have to improvise anyway. I don't think that's a significant amount of our time, but I think teachers are good at being flexible. When something doesn't work, we go to plan B. You have alternate exercises that you do with kids. So then we can resort back to paper and pencil. You just have alternate activities and you get the kids involved in and teach them the same lesson. So hopefully that's a small amount of the time. The technology is just a tool that allows you to do that. But in today's time, I think we still all remember what it was like to teach without technology. The newer people, younger people probably don't, but still they know what teaching without technology looks like and feels like. So I'm not overly concerned about that. Yes, sir.
I can speak, Darlene, to what you were saying. That even though I like to use a lot of technology in my room, there are some learning differences that do not lend themselves to that. So that kids are better served without having to be burdened with keystroking or technology or whatever. Well, that's
Dr. Brown, I mean, as we look into the future, thinking outside the box, we've seen some amazing things that was presented to us today. And we've seen that in a lot of the demonstrations, other conferences, and so forth. But as you think outside the box in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, how do you see the environment of education changing as it going to morph? Is it going to be more remote? How do you see that as we move forward in the future?
That's probably a better question for Randy. If you talk about 15 to 20 years, like, wow, I don't know. We're trying to get
Because I know you're going to be a superintendent here for 20 years, right?
It is. Based on the spending habits of my children, I will be. I will. Because they just keep coming back, don't they? I think they're 30 and they're grown, now their habits are more expensive. So, you know, trying to predict out 5 years is a challenge now. I think 15 years is no different than the job market. I don't know how comfortable or confident you can be that we can say, oh yeah, these are the skills our children are going to need at 15 now for when they're 30 then. I don't think there's much hope or accuracy there. I can only imagine, because the technology world is exponential, is changing so quickly. I can only imagine, just as I think back to the last few years, what's happened. That, I don't know, maybe it's going to be in the button of my coat, you know, and I've heard that in places that, you know, you just have everywhere you are. I mean, now we have a car, I borrowed my secretary's car, and she said, oh, just stick the key in your pocket, and, you know, if you have your pocket, it works, and, you know, you don't need a key, you just have to have it with you. So you can start the car and everything else without even doing anything. It's just, wow, that's pretty cool. So,
I can answer some.
what?
When you go and when you listen to futurists talk, learning is going to be more connected. Access is going to be critical. Equity is going to be another critical issue, because I think some of the things that concern us as much when we look at funding is that how do you make accessibility to information and have learning for students that come to us where resources are not available in home. So equity is a huge issue, but connecting to the world is going to be another real emphasis. And then creating, asking students to, we've got to get away from rote learning. It's got to be students creating meaning and constructing products. So a lot of emphasis is on project-based learning around standards. The standards will not go away, and they're going to become more and more embedded in what we do. So, but it's going to be more global, and you're going to see emphasis where and examples of where students are writing and that they are sharing and do peer editing across, even with students in India. So you're going to see more and more of that kind. So I think that as we think about school, school will not be like what we had. And I'm getting ready to celebrate my 50th reunion this weekend from high school. And I'm going to say this, when you go to the high school that I graduated in from Texarkana, it is built much like the high schools that we still construct. So I think we're going to have to think about facilities. How do facilities accommodate small group, seminars, students being connected to the world? Our thinking about libraries. What are libraries just places we house books, or do they become resource centers so kids have access to the tools that they need to connect and access information, and then to create and solve problems. So that's what the future is saying. So I think we have to rethink, and then I'm going to go over here to the finance. There's a big emphasis on taking the funding from public schools and having vouchers and charter schools. I heard that just recently. And so, while we might say choice sounds nice, it depends on what the choices are. And then when you rob Peter to pay Paul, and you siphon off resources for public schools, and what we do is try to have equity in the system so that whoever shows up at our door, they receive a quality education. And so when you give vouchers or choices, which is a voucher for a choice, who gets to choose? And some of the, so I think that as as taxpayers, you have to think about that. It sounds good. If you have children that have the ability to take children to a private school or to a church-affiliated private school or a real exclusive private school, and you get part of the funding, what does that leave for all of the children whose parents can't do that? So I think that's what we as public educators always try to think about. We know where the population is. The population in Texas is changing drastically, demographically. We're receiving more and more children who are coming with great need economically. So our state, to keep our state vibrant, competitive, productive, to have citizens who are equipped to go out and be productive and pay back into the system, we have to have strong quality education. So I just ask you to think about that as taxpayers, as parents. We all have to invest in seeing that children who show up at our doors have the best quality education possible, and that the resources are there. We don't have to have huge amounts of money, but we do, because we do look at being frugal and efficient, but we also are asked to do a lot to get kids to the standards that we're now being asked to do, and it does take a lot to do that. I'm sorry.
Say your name in.
My question is the same as she started talking about, what she was talking about, because I don't know a lot about Topel ISD, but I think, and I don't know if you all do, but it sounds like from what she was saying, it sounds like she has an idea. I think Topel, from what I understand, is doing a lot of things that are sort of outside the box, and they're trying things that I think a lot of districts haven't tried, and I just wondered what y'all's thoughts were on some of the things that they're doing over Topel, and if that's the direction, and any of the pieces and things that they do over there, anything that we would consider moving towards or anything like that at all.
Well, I know Jeff Turner well. He's been there for a number of years. I toured New Tech High School, which when they decided to build a second high school, they did take a very innovative approach to that. It's very much project-based learning, very much what Dr. Park described. It's more about product. It's more about the end result. And it's a different way to teach courses and to access information. So I think that's a pilot program out there for certain kids, and you don't have to do that. You certainly do the more traditional route. But again, traditional courses, while the buildings often look the same, innovative teachers make the learning look different. So right here in Berkeley ISD right now, you're going to see lessons, at least in some places, that look different. You see some that are still traditional like they were. But there's a lot of teaching that's very different than what I experienced. Because mine was very much sit in rows with a textbook. Here's the examples, here's how you do it, now you go do it. Yeah, we still have some of that, but you have a lot of that that's not. There's a lot of small groups and group instruction and videos and accessing things, and again, what the technology does. So all the buildings often look similar, they're not all the same. So certainly, we look to our neighbors and colleagues about the direction things are going, but that's just something your district has to choose to do. Yeah, we've got the Bechtel here, the Center for Technology and Advanced Learning, that provides some great opportunities. So to a lot of districts, that's very innovative. So one or two more questions, and we'll allow people to
When we look at the schools across the district, this is regarding facilities and security. When you walk into some of the newer schools, you're forced to walk through the office, slide your driver's license, or pick up your bag, and get in. Some of the old facilities don't do that. So, and that's a concern. I know quality education is important, but safety and security for students are really important. So, in this bond pact that's coming up, and I've heard a little bit about this, what are we doing towards with our older facilities to create a safer and more secure environment so that everyone's funneled through that office across all schools in our district?
This is almost a paid advertisement. They're going to think we planned this. And I'll let Mike elaborate, but I have three things that I list as my top priorities. Number one is the safety of our students and our staff. Two, it's about student learning, both in the classroom and in our support programs. And three is just customer service. It's just the way we conduct ourselves, the way we treat people, and the way that we want to be treated. Those are my three goals. So every campus will be addressed from a safety and security standpoint, unless they already have the safety vestibules, and even some of them may want a buzzer system as well. So real quickly, Mike.
Well, the first thing that we looked at when we put this bond referendum together was safety and security. We piloted this last year, a front door on 3 of our campuses. We said when the kids are in class, and you're past the tardy bell, the front doors, all the access doors are locked. We have a camera and an intercom system on the front door that hooks to the office. So anyone who comes to campus for any reason, who visits those campuses during the time when students are in class, hits a buzzer, their image is projected to the office, and they have a conversation with them. Can I help you? Are you here to see a student? Is this a delivery? So they have that conversation. And we had already planned prior to the bond referendum to put that on every one of our campuses except for our high school campuses. You have so many students coming and going at high school, going to Bechtel, going to events, that you work to limit access there, but you won't have the same control you will in middle school and elementaries. What we have added, we have some campuses where you can walk through the front door and you can turn down this hallway or you can turn down that hallway and no one even knows you're in the building. So what we've added, and our ticket is going to be about $2.5 million to go to those campuses and put a security barrier where they do have to buzz through but also have to be admitted through the front office. So that's, I'm pleased that the community's looking at that. We're looking at fencing, have a lot of portable buildings, and frankly, we have some 3-year-olds in portable buildings with no fencing around them. It's a change of culture, and it's a change of a little bit out of necessity of the emphasis of the administration. Communities don't like portables. Communities don't like fences even more. They want those open playgrounds. But the cost of doing that can be absolutely tragic. So very serious, and I am absolutely convinced that this will be the first thing that this committee will make sure is included in the bond.
So if this bond package does not pass, for some reason or another, this won't be implemented in our older schools.
If the bond package doesn't pass, and I shouldn't say this because I should browbeat you into making sure it passes. But I can tell you the front door buzzers and the security cameras, I just don't think Dr. Brown and I would allow that not to happen.
We would find money somewhere to implement that.
would. There'd be a lot of other things that wouldn't get implemented, but that's something that is affordable enough, we may scale it down, but I think we have to address it with some fencing and front door security, because even if you, about the conversation, the bottom line is you know someone's there. If your office is down here, then you step out the hallway and you do this, rather than they came in and I didn't know it. You have to buzz them in. You know they're in the building. Regardless whether you tell if they're a good guy or a bad guy, you know somebody's in the building versus, you know. Yes, ma'am.
We've talked about the voucher system. One of the things that I faced as an advocate trying to educate parents, friends, colleagues about the voucher system is that, what is it? They don't know the details of it. They don't understand the pros and cons, the repercussions, where it may set us is set off. What are we going to do as BISD to be a little more detailed about how a voucher system works, to educate parents, community members, and leaders in their schools so that they can, make a good, sound decision without that front face of going, you're going to get this amount of money to take your child to go to school, wherever you're choosing. It sounds great at first, but there's so many different things that come in behind it. What are we going to do to make sure that everyone understands?
Well, part of it is you have to see how it plays out, because it depends on what they're implementing and what the rules and guidelines are. If the playing field is level, it's less concerning to me. We have to take all comers. Okay, if they're in our district, we take them. We don't get to screen. We don't get to interview. And we've got open enrollment, but we can put some parameters in place, and that's helpful. We should be able to do that. But if they're just going to say, "Oh, you want to come? We'll think about you." But if you're struggling, or if you're this, or if you have issues, or if you have special needs, and no, we don't take you. So if you level the playing field, where anyone who wants to go, then that's okay. But if you're just going to take, those kids without challenges, they're all successful, it ends up being, it's almost a little bit like athletics has become. If you allow kids just to move over, and the best basketball players go to the elite prep school, and you're UIO, you can't do that. You can't move for athletic purposes, but the private schools all covered. So they actually sort of under the table recruit. And your daughter's great. She's 6'2", and she's going to be a middle blocker, in USA Olympics, and we want her. So if they do that, then that's a huge concern. So I'll just answer your question by saying, be informed. We have to be informed. What we will do is we'll watch the legislation, we'll follow it, we'll know what the rules are, and publicize. Inform people. This is what it means, and these are the pros and cons for the people who know the most about it. So just like with voting for a bond or choosing a candidate, you need to become very informed. Last question. Yes, ma'am.
I have our last option goes to some high schools, he also goes to Bethel. Two different IDs now, from what I understand. I did Bethel ID to get in the campus building on the backside. So we were discussing that high school won't have the same budgeting system because of all the coming and going. But can they not have the same type of system that Bethel has, where they have to slide to come in and out? Because they may come in and out 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. Because they come and go to this class, they go to Bethel class, they go to wherever, go home, and then have to come back for athletics or whatever. Is that not an option to do that, where you do know that they're accessing, the campus doors stay locked? Because I'm there, and there are doors on different sides that are unlocked all the time, because kids come and go. Doesn't mean they can't come and go when they get off the bus or when they get out of the vehicle coming back. If they have to slide to get in, they don't just have open access.
Right. And the answer to that is yes, we're looking at different options. It's complex, and we don't have a full solution, but card readers, what we're talking about, because this gets me into any facility in the district, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, so I can hear it too, because I drop my jacket and hang it up and walk outside and can't get back in. So, but yeah, it's like a master key, and as soon as I misplace it, you have to deactivate it. So we can have card readers for kids that need to come in and out of the building, so that people just can't walk in, because we have a concern about leaving doors unlocked. So that's one thing we will be addressing, some solution to that. Okay, for the interest of time, if you have other questions, there'll be a few here around to answer questions for you. I think we've got some certificates to give out. You have to get your own frame.
I need to get him out the door because I'm trying to get him to another meeting. His secretary wrote me says, does he
There's
have
a board
clock?
member waiting on me, right? I think so. Thanks a lot for everything. I'm going to slide out. If you have questions for them, feel free to ask.
So, thanks, guys.
I'm gonna let Stephanie and Kim help me with the certificates this morning. Let me answer, Rand, just the question real quick on the card readers. If you go to the front of our website, we put that real quick. I got you here. I'm gonna show it to you here real quick while we're getting ready to do these certificates. On the front of our website, we've got a link to the bond study committee. Everything that they're getting is on this site. And if you'll scroll down, you click on that. I'm gonna keep directing here. Click on meeting dates and resources, and you'll see what's in there. You can look at what's in there, and this goes back to the other question about security, what we presented to them about security this last time. Card readers, are expensive to put in, and there is a cost, and there is some of that that's in, that proposal. So you can look and see what they're looking at as well, and just know that.
Put the cameras and the bus systems in it, because it's just not practical, as we all know, and so just, it's a matter of, this is what our hospitals versus not.
Okay, let me go through these real quick, and I'm starting to look, because we looked at busy now, and I'm leading from here too. Thank you. Again, it's hard to believe we started this in January, and now we're here October 25th to do this. Yes, ma'am.
The question was really going to be for you. What do you need from us as a group? Obviously, going out individually and educating everybody, but is there anything more than as a group we can do to help with the bond election going forward, and then just the school district as a whole, that you could see us after going through all of these trainings and stuff that we can help with?
And that's a good question. Thank you. It's one of our things that we hope that you've gotten this year is just a better feel for just the working and the great question. What do we know about vouchers, and what do we need to know? What do we need to be watching? Understand we're restricted as a school district to a point where we can share the facts out there, but we can't necessarily give a beyond that. So
well, and you know why?
No, yeah.
Because of the last election, it was on it was one of the amendments we voted on, and it caused a lot of lifestyle.
It's caught us all. Yeah, it did. But my challenge, what I'm going to do to you here in the next couple of days, as I try to do after each of these meetings, is I'll send a link to those who couldn't be with us today to what is doing the resources. But I'll also ask for some feedback from you. First of all, because somebody asked me about this, is where do we go from here as far as next year? I want to know if we do this again next year, how can we do this better for a new group? What would y'all recommend to us? But as we look forward, pay attention to what's going on. Some of you are on our bond committee, and thank you for that and that additional time that you're doing. But be aware of what those needs are, and then take what you've learned about school finance, and don't just, as we've learned in all these political ads, don't just take for granted what they're saying in the ad. It's true. You need to go and if you've got a question, at least you know the resources of people now to say, hey, Mike, still, they're saying this about school finance. Is this really true? And how does this impact verbal ISD? A lot of the difficult times sometimes is kind of, like I said, it's hard for us to process. We want to do it quickly and get but sometimes it's Shane in Austin. We'll get a lot of calls as they start filing bills this next month for the legislative session. Well, how does that impact you? Well, most bills that are filed don't even make it beyond just being filed. So we've got to start seeing what vouchers look like in school finance. And, are they going to take any of that extra rainy day money and really put any of that back into schools? And if not, and if they cut education more, we need groups like this to be able to get out to our communities and our schools and say, guys, this is impacting our kids in verbal ISD. And we can do one thing, we can sit down and not say a word and just take it, and then moan and groan because we don't have what we need resources-wise. We can stand up and say, we need you to do something different in Austin. And so we need this group, now that you've got some of that knowledge, to help us watch those things. Again, if you see anything, you've met everybody now, all of the campus this year. And you know who does with the technology and things like that. Ask us those questions. There's nothing that we're going to run from. If we don't know the answer, we'll say, we don't know the answer yet. We'll watch. But if we do, then we'll give you the answers so you can help with that out. And if we're missing a beat in trying to get some of that out, if there's things I'm missing, sometimes I don't get it till after the fact. That's frustrating, but sometimes it happens. And but we do. We try to process that as quick as we can. But if we're missing something, then let us know so we can make sure that we have that somewhere along the way.
In the detail, how much of it can we really talk about? You just don't know.
The great thing for this group is you have no limitations at all. And that's why we count on an informed group that can go back and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. And answer a question 2 days ago with the Superintendent's Council about the difference between us and Northwest ISD. And if we were just funded at the same level that they were, we'd get about $40 million extra a year. That could help.
That can do.
You can do some of that,
Good
Mr.
security control
Mr.
there.
Still, you know, we can take care of it.
I could, Dr. Clark could think about 97% of that before I even know.
We will stay around. I'm not going to keep you longer. Thank you so much for y'all being here, being a part of this. We appreciate your time. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving.